Alright, we are finally ready to get started. We're going to start in the bottom right hand corner, as you can see, and sort of do a little outline of what we see. Luckily the tape is kind of covering a spot that we don't really need to draw on, so it's not in the way. Oops, sorry. Okay, so start here, and of course you have to be really careful to make sure you stay within, I guess, the boundaries of what you're creating to make sure you don't lose your spot. First thing we're going to do is sort of draw the outline of this flower petal kind of right here. So we'll start with this very sort of soft color and just kind of make the outline of this thing using our weight to kind of hold us down. So just kind of head up this way. We're kind of delineating this white area, and obviously you can see there's a lot of fuzziness in the photograph, and we're going to account for that eventually. Everything is going to be, you never want sharp boundaries on your drawing when there aren't any actually on the subject. So down in this area we've got a little darker sort of green delineating this, so we're going to follow the top. Let's see, we got here and then here. Okay, we're going to kind of head up about right there, head up this way, kind of real soft. The thing you got to remember about pastels is, yeah, you don't want to make dark, strong marks on the paper where you want it to be soft, but it's more erasable, I would say, than your typical black charcoal. And I think let's see. Oh, yeah, see, I've already screwed up. And that is the good news. You can fix screw-ups pretty easily with your eraser. You can see electric eraser. I don't actually prefer this one because it turns the wrong direction, and I can't reverse the batteries to make it turn in the direction I want it to. Let's see, what was the one? Yeah, this one. Okay, so obviously counting squares it can be tedious, and it can actually be, you could feel like it's limiting what you're doing, but ultimately, in order to get the right proportions, you stay within the boundaries of what you have. Just kind of heading up this way. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, we gotta go to about right here, and right there is where we're following this line right now. Okay. Then we can switch over to this darker. We can make the outline with our darkest green. right here and just kind of bring this over to this direction. And like I said, nothing, absolutely nothing has to be perfect ever, but certainly in your beginning stages, nothing. It can look like you're not accomplishing much at all in the beginning. Okay, let's go back down here and delineate this other, and we can actually use this darker. Maybe this color's better for this. Okay, so we've got this little spot heading this way, crossing about right here. Just kind of bring this over and then head towards about like this. Sometimes, you just do this eventually you kind of know how you need to do it to stay. And then we kind of stop there. Okay, so now we're going to focus on this area, which is this area. And we're going to draw some of these, well, I guess you could call them little stripes, or actually whatever you want to call them, on the flower petal. And I've got this also device that I made that helps you rest your hand above the paper without touching. Okay, so you've got a few stripes. Let's I think this is a good color for this. Actually, no, let's go with this lighter. This green here. And you can see there's just a few of these stripes. The first one that you can really see is kind of going in this direction. So we'll start right here. I actually need to put this over here. Kind of go like this. Cross right here. Kind of come over here. Go all the way across this square and then kind of down in that direction. It's obviously very subtle. My computer keeps yelling at me to restart, which is the last thing I want to do right now. So then you have another one kind of starting underneath here. And you always, when you're doing these things, you can get caught up in trying to follow the quote, trying to make it match what you think, but at the end of the day, I don't want to use the word parallel because we're not talking about straight lines, but these stripes are parallel in nature. So if they don't match each other, then it's not going to make a whole lot of sense. Okay, there's another one kind of right there, kind of heading down in this direction. Now, right now, I'm not really accounting for the thickness of these greens and how they're gonna sort of, I think maybe kind of brought this one down a little too far down. This one needs to kind of go over here. This one kind of extends a little further into this direction and then kind of disappears over here. And then the next one kind of starts down this way, kind of crosses over, kind of comes over here, sort of has a little angle, goes over here. And there's kind of one Just makes very subtle over here, and a little bit and kind of disappears. Then there's right above here, there's one that kind of goes this way, sort of disappears and then kind of reappears. Goes over here, a little above the halfway point. And as you can see, these things, it's more difficult than it looks initially. You kind of have to, you know, you kind of get bogged down in the desire to make it match exactly, and certainly if you're not, you can easily just kind of, if the stripes don't appear parallel, it's just not going to look natural, and you just kind of have to take a step back and make sure that it does. Now, we'll think that's kind of enough. There might be another little bitty subtle one over here, and you can always, the good thing about pastels, seemingly, you can just keep editing it, more or less. Might be a good idea to sort of fill in this, just a little bit of this darker area up here with this dark green. I mean, it's borderline black, and we'll make it to where it, you know, it's eventually going to look more or less black, but you'll see you can just fill in some of the color and then come on top of that and fill in it with more black. And the smoothness of this border, you know, this border is not it's not a sharp border, it's a very soft, fuzzy border. But right now we're not really trying to do too much with that. What we want to do, start down here in this lower left area and start creating this background, the background color, which is somewhat complicated, but it's going to be a combination of this sort of darker shade of green, and as it comes towards the right side, it becomes a little brighter, and that's obviously so. You just put your background color in, and it's important to understand that pastels on smooth paper, they can be tricky, because you'll feel like you can't quite cover, like you still have this sort of white in the background that you never fully can sort of account for or remove from the paper, and it just takes it takes some persistence, and you have to go over it multiple times, and even post fixation you may find yourself going over it. But when you press too hard, you completely remove the tooth from the paper, and then you're stuck having difficulty getting the color, any color to stick, any chalk to stick. And that's something you just kind of learn. Now, as you can see, moving to the right, it becomes a little lighter. And, well, this pencil's maybe a little too sharp, but you just kind of, you also probably notice I'm not really necessarily having to erase the grid lines as I go, because this color is so light that it just kind of disappears. But it's not a bad idea to erase as you go, just to kind of make sure there's nothing in the background that stays. Could do that with the electric pencil sharpener. Actually, I usually use a other type of eraser, but I just need to go find one. I don't have one right here in front of me. So we'll continue to fill in this brighter green, and you know, you want to go in the direction of the flower petals of, I guess you call them the stripes. Could be as once you have your basic structures drawn in, you no longer need to rely on the lines to tell you where you're at. And they free you up to kind of just cross over areas. Okay, so we're just gonna kind of fill this in. You don't have to be too slow with it. You can see there is some tinge of white. I mean, really, the combination of colors that it takes to kind of create the color of this flower petal. There's a combination of white, there's some yellow in there. And we're gonna add those. You just add them in layers. And of course it doesn't mix exactly like oil paint, but it does mix in an interesting way. But for now, keep it nice and light. You don't want to lose those darker green stripes we put in there. So you can just accentuate them. And maybe even make them a little darker now that you've kind of put some of that dark. I mean, they're really kind of even darker than we made them. Just kind of go right over them. And that kind of helps put a different layer of color on them, so it'll stand out and you won't sort of remove. This one has a pretty sharp line, I would say. This one is actually pretty thin. So just kind of go over it in a sort of thin way. So let's get back to just kind of filling in all of this. And I understand the fill-in we're doing doesn't appear to be very uniform, but we'll get to that. Let's see, there's actually this little subtle over here. I'm not sure what we're doing. I mean, sometimes you're just not sure what you're drawing, but there's this little kind of rectangular looking lighter colored area that kind of runs into here. Just kind of draw in a little outline of that, you know. I'm not sure you know, you're just drawing what you see, and then you can see between this one and this one, there's a sort of like little darker line connecting these two stripes. Just kind of put that in. Then up here, kind of got this one thing, and then it's very subtle. Going like this, kind of reaches out up here. There's kind of another, maybe over here you can see. There's just all these little subtle shades of slightly darker areas that you kind of want to account for some of them. A lot of this can be done with your fingers later, which we'll do, but for now, let's just keep filling in the background. It almost looks like there's a kind of a slightly darker center to this area going over through here. Kind of fill that in, make it a little stronger. Maybe add a tiny bit of darker green just kind of in there, and this, I mean, that's very subtle, and we're gonna have to go around that, and it'll blend right in. It'll barely show up. Okay, we just fill this in. You want to be a little careful when you're extending your light colors over your dark colors, because they can pull some of that dark into the light. Okay, we just keep filling in these spots. You never want to push too hard. That will mess everything up. Make a spot that you can't erase is what you want to avoid. Okay, this spot over here becomes pretty light. We'll go real light on this, and we're going to probably just, let's erase the rest of these lines. A little bit of line there. Okay. I mean, it's almost like becoming whitish on this area, so can use real light color, and we'll go back over it with white to make it even lighter. But we're just kind of filling in a background color right now. And I know it's not uniform, that doesn't matter at the moment. And this spot we'll kind of avoid because it is going to be very light, this sort of. Okay, so first thing, I mean, this is a very rough fill in here. First thing I would do, going to do, is darken this lower left and bring the darker areas to the right that need to be. This is it's actually, I mean, it's very dark here. We might even end up throwing in a little bit of black to really darken it, but you really want to cover. You don't want any white showing through. at all. Okay, and then let me go and grab my pencils. I'm sorry, my chalks. Guess I don't need. Alright, so once you've got these bigger areas, got a few shades of green. They're not going to match. The beauty about it is nothing ever needs to match exactly. Just kind of take this, put it on there, okay, and use your finger. Okay. Now fingers tend to erase on pastels. You can see everything maybe getting a little lighter. But you go back over it again. It's kind of trying to make it more uniform at the moment. Now, I would argue that we're not quite getting the right shade that we need, so we need to add a little more of this sort of olive color green in there to kind of darken it up. And we're gonna get it right eventually, but it's definitely color mixing in pastels. Takes a lot of time and patience, and there is no way to do it in one pass. Even if you had all the colors, shades of colors you need in one pencil, you're always going to go back over it and back over it and smudge it, play with it, and so once you get a lot of dust, it's not a bad idea to have a vacuum cleaner to suck some of it up. Just try to turn it on real briefly. I don't want the noise to be too terrible. But one thing you can accomplish using your fingers is sort of smudging out what seems to be the white that you can't quite seem to erase by drawing over it. It makes it more uniform, as you can see, and it's going to help with just the sort of awkward shade differences you get from not going directly in order and doing everything all at once in one spot. When you keep coming back, this area is going to be lighter. But I would say right now the biggest problem I'm seeing with this is that these stripes appear to be not quite so subtle as they're supposed to be. So what we're going to do, we are going to try to darken them one last time, give them a sort, and not, of course, not make a nice, we're not going to make a thin line with it. We're going to give it some sort of fuzziness, because we don't, I mean, none of these, as you can see, are just solid dark green lines coursing through this flower petal. And you don't want to give the appearance that they are. But we are going to come back and darken basically the whole area. So these, I know it looks like right now I'm accentuating them, but eventually they're gonna blend in with the background. Or we'll make them, because it has to be a subtle thing. Alright, so alright, so what we need, go over them with your fingers. You'd be amazed how much you can accomplish with your fingers. Just kind of smudging it, making it kind of disappear into the background or become more subtle. I think overall the whole thing needs to be a shade darker. I kind of wish I had a block, a chalk block for this sort of olive colored green, but it's fair to say I don't. So what we're gonna do, we're just gonna make everything, add this shade to the whole thing, just very subtle. We're not gonna make lines, we're just gonna shade it all pretty quickly. Make it a shade darker. I'm not sure how well finger smudging is gonna do. Guess we'll find out. But we just want to make these stripes on here more subtle. We want the whole thing to be a different shade. Over here we can be a little more aggressive, making it darker. Just kind of putting this color like all over, and then just spreading it in and see how what is that gonna accomplish. Let's go ahead and vacuum off this dust. Of course, you always want to be super careful. You do not want your vacuum cleaner to grab the paper. Let's see. This should be making everything just slightly darker than it was. But, you know, we'll see. You just have to keep playing with it until you like what you see. Let's see, so probably the best way to describe what I would say we're seeing now is we need a touch of white. I think I need, let me find my white pencil. So if we come across some of this with white, we can make all this stuff just a little bit brighter. That's supposed to look brighter on this right hand side, kind of up here. Now you certainly don't want to push too hard. Just kind of, it just makes everything a little fluffier. You can see under here, there's a hint of white kind of just going, certainly within this little spot. Over here, get everything over here is just a little lighter. Now, certainly when you smudge white onto existing color, it always can disappear. It'll look like you didn't add any, so that's just something to keep in mind. So we add some of this white. And it sort of extends over here. It's kind of light, kind of going down this way. Over here it seems like there's sort of white overlaying all of this. Okay. Then you kind of smudge it all just a bit. And that white, it'll spread around. It has an effect. But I feel like we're doing okay. I think we still need to darken this sort of lower left area. Let's see, this is not quite the color. Let's just add tiniest amount of black right in here, that tiniest amount in there. Then we're gonna kind of spread that out just a bit. You can kind of pull the darker shades that way by doing this. Still think we kind of need to add this little bit of dark to these stripes. Yeah, I realize they probably already look darker than we want them to, but we want to extend them out, make sure that they disappear towards the left. So we need to kind of accentuate them just a bit towards the right, so they seem like they kind of disappear into nowhere over here. This outlining this, and then there's a little bitty touch of something going this way. Alright, let's go on top of that with this dark olive color again, and kind of give these stripes a little more fuzzy edge, since they're looking real sharp. We don't want them to look too sharp or too thin. And It's really just the right amount of shading and smudging. Get it to where it'll look right, but it may very well be that you have to come back over this after everything is fixed. Got this sort of subtle dark area kind of just going this way. And then a lot of this over here needs to be kind of gone over with this color. And it appears like right here, this sort of darkness joins and this sort of joins there. Some of this. Definitely these sort of rays of darker color kind of extending out from this spot. And like I said, this is not an exact science. I can never predict the approach I would use on something like this. The various steps before you do it. It's always been a struggle. It's something you do it as it comes. You do it. Make sure that the stripes disappear on this left side. Smudge it all out until they just fade into the background. That's what you want to do. So look, let's just kind of a strange, this very lower right hand corner's got this white area with this sort of raindrop effect. I don't think I'm gonna bother with the that sort of subtle blue and pink and yellow over here. It's, you always decide what details you want to include and what details you want to exclude. It's kind of an off-white area on the picture. Actually, probably the best thing to do would be go over it with white chalk, because white chalk actually is off-white, and you actually want the paper to all be the same texture. You all want it to have been drawn over. So what I usually do is take some white chalk and just kind of come up along this border. Cover now that tape. I'm going to leave the tape for now. We'll cover that later. Put your white chalk on there. Try to cover the whole thing. Now that, when you use chalk, you make a lot of dust. So you definitely want to vacuum that up. Okay, not sure what's going on there. Got some smudge of the color that was already on that chalk. That's no big deal. You can go over that. You can always fix the picture and keep going over an area if you consider it a screw up. Now, we are going to just smudge our fingers along this border and make it soft. Okay? Because it's a soft border, it's not a sharp border. And then that border becomes soft. Now, I think we should move to this area over here. And just kind of take care of that spot. Now, I'm not saying this is not done, okay? But we'll come back to it. I forgot to plug in my camera. Battery's gonna die in a minute. There we go. Okay. Alright. So, as you can see, it's not quite, paper's not staying down. I'll just hold it with my fingers. So this area kind of heads over here, kind of curves down a little bit, kind of like this, sort of like that. And we've got this little, so let's bring this over here, and then we've got this kind of curve upwards. Let's just kind of draw that in real rough, and it goes across here. Bring that way. Doesn't matter that this isn't quite the right shade. It's dark enough. Alright, then we've got kind of this going like this. Then we kind of have this little thing that comes down here. And then we go straight down to the edge. More like that. So down here we've got this very dark little square of green. Let me get my, move this over just a bit. You can actually put this right here. As long as you don't put something down, well, let's put this right here. As long as you don't put something down and move it, you shouldn't mess up your drawing too much. So let's, this comes up about halfway. Just this little area that's real dark. Okay, connect that to that. And we'll just put that in. I mean, it's almost black, so you do your dark green. Okay. And we'll come back and make it darker. It's not that important right now. So this is kind of an interesting so up here we've got this let's go with this color right now. It's dark olive. And it's light. Like at this side, it's lighter. It's as dark as this. So kind of make this blend into this area. But then over here, it lightens up. Kind of lightens up a bit. And then it almost becomes white right over here. Let's erase these lines. Well, actually, you've got these very, very subtle stripes. I would say just a couple emanating off of this over here. Very subtle. And we're gonna make these kind of just go this way. Kind of like this. This other one coming off of here. Going this way. And they're gonna be very subtle and kind of disappear. You almost might not even bother putting anything to represent them. Okay. We can clear these grid lines. Alright, so we've got this kind of brightish green color in this lower part. Let's just try to make these little stripes slightly more olive colorish. Then we're going to use this color here to kind of fill in Actually, let's do something else first. Let's see how we use that. Yeah, we definitely have like a different quality to this green over here. Let's kind of come in here. Yeah, that's probably not quite right. Let's use this one. Just kind of make this shade kind of dark green, and it really blends over here. It's kind of all the same. Kind of going up like this, and then it pretty quickly becomes sort of olive colored. Just kind of go right on top of that. You can see this area is sort of spared color, so we'll just stay away from that, or just give it a little bit down here. Kind of just want to go all in. Go like this. Underneath here. And anything that looks like it has some white overlaying it, we'll fill that in too. There's almost a shade of, seems like there's like a shade of yellow in here, but let's just kind of just do something here, kind of smudge it with your fingers. Yeah, I feel like there's some yellow. This needs to be a little darker. Put in some of this really bright green, just kind of overlay over all of this, some of that. See that? Just give it this sort of yellow tinge with that green, and then kind of blend it into this darker spot, and it works. And this blending works pretty amazingly. Just kind of smudge it all together. Now we've got at the top border of this a sort of tiny visible edge of this sort of olive color that should be delineated from this much darker green above it, which is the background. So we need to accentuate the darkness right above it to make sure that you can see there's a border there. There's two structures overlapping that are not the same color. Okay. We need to do it all the way over. You do that. Smudge it a bit. Now, what we're gonna do, take the white pencil in order to sort of delineate what's supposed to be lighter color over here. We're gonna kind of go over it. Okay, that will be how you make that border. You make a nice, I don't want to say sharp edge, but you have to make an edge, and you kind of have to, and that's how you do it. Okay. So now, some of these areas kind of between these stripes, let's just do this real quick. Make them appear a little lighter. Like I said, those stripes are so subtle that, I mean, you barely need to have a hint of them. I think we just need to add a tiny bit of yellow. No, let's not do that. Just want to make these greenish stripes, just the tiniest bit of accentuation, and I mean just a tiny bit. This one kind of comes a little further. I know it doesn't look smooth at first. You kind of come back in with this sort of brightish green, which has a lot of yellow in it to keep this sort of looking bright. One thing you want to keep in mind when you shade, if you just had touched a darker color, you need to wipe it off. You will make things dark unexpectedly. Okay, so this is looking okay. I think we need, overall, we need a little more darkness over here. Because it's almost, I mean, it's borderline. It's almost black. And this is this little area kind of has an accentuated little line. Okay, let's blend that in just a bit. Just a bit. And we're going to make this spot almost black because it really needs to be almost black. So you just take the black, put it right over it. That's a lot of black dust to just blow off, so let's go ahead and suck that up. Do a tiny bit of finger blending. Just kind of letting it all blend into this side anyway. Make sure you completely cover the really dark center. And then you can take your dark green and just kind of go right around it. Blend it into the black. They're actually, okay. So that, I think, is, I want to emphasize, we're not, none of this, you're never done until you're done. Let's just make this border with a clean finger. Make it nice and soft. And I think we'll just stop there for now. And I believe next time we will probably complete this area and just move upwards. Alright, until next time.